A warm welcome to Disky Talk with Liolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I'll ask that you please do subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things MTN 8 Wafa Wafa between Golden Arrows and Mamelodi Sundowns, which played out to a 1-1 draw in KZN. So let's head straight into it then, and let's have a look at tactical post-match analysis with regards to how this one played out. So the blue team will represent Golden Arrows and the red team will represent Mamelodi Sundowns. So Golden Arrows lined up in their traditional 4-4-1-1. And look, what I like about this Golden Arrows side and what Seema is doing with it is that he's building upon the very same foundation which was laid by Mngqithi. And I think this Golden Arrows side is playing some lovely football. However, when it comes to today's encounter then, at right back they had Utube, two centre halves, they had Sibisi and Zuge, and at left back they had Tele, and then in goals they had Mluwane. So this is more or less their back five shape, but with the exception of Matiane, and Zuge actually took his place. And personally, I quite like Zuge more than Matiane. I think Sibisi and Zuge actually complement each other very well. And then when we move into the heart of midfield, they had Udlamini, Nondwandwe, and then on the right-hand side, they started with Makawana. As the left wing, they started with Upule Modi, and then Charlie, and then Michael Boy Kumede started up front. So that is how Golden Arrows lined up. Let's then have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns and the personnel that they went with. So with Mamelodi Sundowns, they lined up in 3-4-3. That has become their standard formation. So that is the system that they like to institute. So in goals, you have Onyango, and then you have Grant Kekan as the right-sided centre-half, Rivaldo Kutsia as your libero, and then the left-sided centre-back was Rushin Duruk. In the heart of midfield, you had Jali Mkulisi as the right wing-back, you had Tapelo Murena, left wing-back Lila K, and then the three up front, they had Shalile as the striker, Serino and Erasmus playing as two number 10s. So heading into the game then, I think Golden Arrows started really well. I was quite impressed with their counter-pressing A, and B, their energy. So with regards to how Golden Arrows started, this is something to actually point out, because from a tactical standpoint, this is something we don't see from a lot of teams whenever they do play against Sundowns. Most teams, whenever they do play against Sundowns, they will actually drop off in certain areas. So when you look at how Golden Arrows started, whenever they'd lose the ball in midfield, they'd look to counter-press as opposed to dropping off. Because what a lot of teams generally do against Sundowns is they'll lose the ball and then they'll drop off because they want to be able then to obviously get into a defensive shape that won't see them being hit on the counter. But this Golden Arrow side is a lot braver than what you think. So they'd look to counter-press from the consolidation phase, which is in midfield, which is this area. And whenever Sundowns did get to this area, that's when they were looking to press them. If Golden Arrows lost the ball, they'd counter-press. And as a result of their bravery, that's how the first goal came. So Mamelodi Sundowns were looking to develop the play and play out from their own half. Ball was played into Erasmus, and he just couldn't cushion it into Serino's path. Golden Arrows win the ball. The ball is played into Udlamini. Dlamini gets it, and he's able then to beat both Jali and Serino with the cut box. Gets past them, and he drives a beautiful shot into the bottom corner. And yeah, so with regards to that, I think at that point, Golden Arrows were on top of the game. And what's most important coming into this type of game for Golden Arrows is being smart with regards to how they do things. Because like I mentioned, Sundowns, they like to put the ball on the ground and they play. They dominate possession each and every single game they play. Golden Arrows have a similar philosophy. So what was always going to be interesting was going to see, what does Golden Arrows do? Do they try then adapt to the game model that Sundowns institute, or do they go with what they believe is right? And what they did very well in the first half was to sort of relinquish the ball possession and allow Sundowns to have the ball, but also control the game. Just because you have ball possession, it doesn't always mean that you're in control of the game, because for large parts of the first half, Golden Arrows, in my opinion, were in control. And that's because they made sure that Sundowns would play in zones that they can't really hurt them. But as the game progressed within the first half, we started to see Sundowns growing into the game. But like I mentioned, what Golden Arrows were very good at in the beginning phases of the game was how they blocked certain passing channels. So yes, it is a 4-4-1-1, but whenever they were defending, what you would see is that it would become a 4-5-1. So very compact and sort of a bank of 4 and a bank of 5. And then you'd have Lila K, who'd look to keep the width, Tapelo Mren on the right side to keep the width. You'd have Shalulile in there, and then you'd have Erasmus, you'd have Serino, and then you'll have Jali and Mkulisi, and then you've got Rivaldo Coetzee, who normally occupies that position, and then you have Rushin Duruk. So whenever Sundowns are in the opposition half, they obviously become a lot more aggressive with regards to their shape. So it ends up looking somewhat of a 3-6-1. So whenever the game progressed into this kind of situation, what Arrows were very good at was denying Sundowns the half spaces. So they'd block certain passing channels, and then it was difficult, and they couldn't always find Ushalulile in there. And whenever they did find Ushalulile, what they would do very well, Golden Arrows, is that they'd get very tight onto Shalulile. And that's why it was difficult for Sundowns to create many clear-cut chances. And going then into second half, I was impressed with Sundowns because that's when they picked it up a bit. And as difficult as it was to play because of the weather conditions, but they impressed me in second half because they upped the tempo with regards to their passing triangles and their combinations, and also in the final third, they became a lot more aggressive. So Sundowns had the lion's share of possession, so most of the game played out in this fashion. You know, you had Sundowns deep in Arrows' half, and to a certain degree, I think what also affected Arrows from a counter-attacking perspective is Bulemodi, who went off injured in the first half. And look, he is their talisman, he is their key player, very quick, very skillful. He is the guy that is their biggest goal threat from wide and also from a counter-attacking perspective. And losing him and his pace is what actually hurt this Golden Arrow side. Yes, Tongo did come in, but I mean, Tongo's not cut from the same cloth as Upulemodi. So yeah, Arrows in the second half started to drop a lot deeper, and I think they really struggled, you know, and to a certain degree, I just wanted them to be a lot braver in possession, as opposed to them just looking to clear the ball and then stay in their half. Because first half, what they did the opposite. Whenever they did lose the ball, whenever they did lose the ball in Sundowns half or clear the ball into Sundowns half, they'd push up. But in second half, they were doing the opposite. They would stay in their own half. And I'm against that, because what that does is that you start to invite pressure. And when you invite pressure, before you know it, man, pressure bursts pipes, as the saying goes. And that's what we saw. So Sundowns then made changes. So they brought Aubrey Mudiba in, they brought Kutumela and Safranko in. But the two men who made a huge impact was Kutumela. So you'd see him occupying the right side. So yes, brought in as part of the front three, but he'd tend to go out wide. And then you had Murena, who would stay a lot deeper. And then you had Safranko, who was occupying these two center halves, occupying the box. So Sundowns then started to look to overload now, because they desperately needed that goal. So at times you'd see Rivaldo Coetzee, for example, taking shots from range. And then where the game really changed was when Thabiso Kutumela picked the ball up from out wide. He put in the first ball, which was a beautiful cross, but Safranko just couldn't finish, and Lungwane managed to get it away. But then the second cross was when put it front post, near post, and then you had Safranko finish. That's what leveled matters, and that was around the 85th minute. And Sundowns, look, they were growing into the game, and on another day, if the weather was kind and things played out differently, I think Sundowns would have actually won this game, you know. And from a qualitative perspective, even though the weather wasn't favorable, but Sundowns still did play good football at times. And I was happy with this lineup actually, and with the personnel today, because they created more chances, they had more shots on target. It's just that on the day, Mngqithi was absolutely phenomenal as he walked away with the man of the match. So yeah, it was a very interesting first leg. So it is 1-1, but it is advantage Sundowns because they do have the away goal, and they will take that advantage back to Pretoria. It's going to be interesting to see then who comes out on top in Pretoria with regards to this MTN 8 fixture. Hopefully we have better weather, which is conducive for the cause, so that both teams are able to go head to head, because one thing I do know about Golden Arrows is that they're not afraid to play. They're a side that they are going to try impose themselves on any team they come up against in football. So very interesting encounter. And yeah, I must say though that Mngqithi, I must highlight the maturity that comes with him and the experience that he's gaining, because other goalkeepers in such matches, whenever the conditions are not favorable, they often make those silly mistakes. So sometimes trying to catch the ball when it's wet, that's not a good idea. So what Mngqithi would do very well is that he'd always punch the ball as opposed to trying to catch it, because sometimes you try to catch it, you make the mistake, they score. So I was very impressed with his performances and how mature he was. And even the low shots, whenever the ball was hit at him with speed and it would skid off the surface, he'd always parry it to the side, which is, those are the fundamentals, which are actually basics for a goalkeeper, but he did that very well. Also very happy to see Jali and Mngqithi back for Mamelodi Sundowns. And yeah, so going into the second leg, like I mentioned, very interesting. It is advantage to Sundowns. And yeah, so thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Luyolo. I thoroughly enjoyed breaking down this game. And at home, please do let me know in the comment section, what do you guys make of this 1-1 result? Do you guys think that Mamelodi Sundowns will be able to wrap it up in Pretoria, or do you feel that Golden Arrows will end up surprising Mamelodi Sundowns and they'll go through to the MTN 8 final? Thank you very much for supporting Diski Talk with Luyolo. Keep tuning in, and yeah, signing out.